gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Pitchside Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the BSB, and welcome again. Before we get into anything, of course, we're not going to be talking about the league. There will be no La Liga section in this episode, as there was only one match yesterday, and that match was actually a rescheduled encounter for Real Madrid from match day 2. So we're going to be talking about that match in a different video shortly after this episode goes live. Before everything, remind you to like, share, comment on the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course, enable notifications to receive the YouTube version of this podcast and every other content on this channel. Follow us on social media, Side PSB on Twitter, PitchsidePod on Instagram, and of course listen us to on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other podcast platform. Let's get into the business and the meat of things on the midweek. And the start would be certainly from the Premier League. Of course, 2 matches were played yesterday. Wolves defeated Chelsea at the Molineux 2-1 a game. Frank Lampard, I think, should be considering a lot of things at the moment after this game. The couple of losses that he had, the one the weekend against Everton, which was all about Everton staying at the back and defending really, really well until the end of the game, while Chelsea created loads of chances. The game against Wolves here, probably more of the same, really. They created a lot of chances as well, but Wolves were defending, as well as Everton did on the weekend, but also Wolverhampton took more chances and took more opportunities, especially in that second half. The first half was pretty ineffective, pretty dull performance. If you ask me, from the Chelsea point of view, they tried a little bit exaggerated, about crossing, and they went about trying too much to get from the sideways. And Wolves, I think, were happy to just let them cross all day, really, and let them play on diagonal long balls. Which, considering that they had 3 centre halves. And 3 long centre halves, not just any centre halves, they were really dealing with that pretty easy. In the second half, Chelsea got a little bit more zing on their attacks, really. They scored in the 57th minute thanks to Olivier Giroud. Brilliant finish from a Ben Chilwell cross, of course, barely passing the line despite the attempts of Rui Patricio to save it. Daniel Podence equalised in 66th minute, and from there, of course, Wolves played really, really better. They played really well in that game. They took the last 25 and 20 minutes by storm, really, putting all sorts of trouble to Chelsea in that second half. They had some terrific attempts on target as well. In the end, Chelsea committing, trying to get forward, of course. They get caught on the counter, completely out of shape, out of position, really. Defensive, shambolic performance in that sort of counter-attack. Daniel Podence serves Neto on a platter. He makes his way through the box and puts it past Edward Mendy for a 2-1 victory that, again, should make Frank Lampard really consider a lot of things in terms of his formation and his side and their status in the table. Certainly, are they a top table side? Are they title contenders really at the moment? After these 2 results, it doesn't seem such, really. The squad maybe would need some toning, some consideration again before heading into more big fixtures, because games are coming thick and fast, really. And also you have to keep in mind the end goal, so to speak, which is the round of 16 fixture against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, which will be a hard test for Frank Lampard if he keeps his form as it's going. Chelsea, of course, with this loss, they actually keep their spot at 5th, really, because none of the top 4 has played yet. Wolves move up to 10th with 20, just 2 points behind. Imagine that, 5 points down. 5 teams, currently on 20 points behind Chelsea, Wolves, Man United, Everton, West Ham and Manchester City. And speaking of Manchester City, it was the worst result possible for Pep Guardiola and his boys after the draw in the derby against Man United on the weekend. Really, the last thing that they wanted was to lose 2 points against West Bromwich. This is a game, I think, you look at the stats, it tells you everything really. Manchester City had 77% possession on the ball in this game. They had 26 shots for 1 shot on 26 shots and 7 shots on goal. West Brom had 1 shot on goal, which was, ironically their own goal, which got them an important point there at the Etihad Stadium. It is weird, it feels weird at the moment if you are a Manchester City fan, watching your side struggling to score, struggling sometimes to create chances. I mean, not yesterday, but they struggle to create chances, they struggle to keep the momentum going, and they struggled, it is Guardiola's worst nightmare, it's Guardiola's worst form, just being ineffective, putting the ball and passing it sideways, trying to pass the ball into the net. That's been a problem for Man City under Guardiola for the last couple of seasons. I mean, yes, they've been scoring goals for fun, but sometimes in certain situations they've been playing too ineffectively. They try to sideway the ball a lot. They play a lot of sideways and back. It's copy and paste of probably of the Spain national team, where it's ineffective really and doesn't have any kind of advantage and doesn't give you any kind of opportunity to to be a little bit more effective. Man City probably should think outside the box. Certainly they don't shoot from outside the box on the pitch. They need to think outside of that really if you want to make any impact on that. With this result, Manchester City move up to 6 momentarily, I would say. West Ham, Everton, United all play today and tomorrow. West Ham and Everton play today, of course, and United play tomorrow. Speaking of West Brom, really, that's an important point for them, by the way. Shout out to them. They had a great defensive performance. Their goalkeeper was incredible. He pulled a couple of really, really good saves in the first and the second half as well, to deny Manchester City the opportunity to score. Deserved point for West Bromwich, and another ineffective performance of Man City. This should be really concerning, I think, for Guardiola. Moving on, of course, to the 2 matches of yesterday. On today, there's there's some really, really meaty fixtures to look forward to. Arsenal face Southampton, that's an interesting one to look ahead to. Leeds face Newcastle. Leicester City faces Everton, interesting game as you mentioned. Leicester City, could they get top of the table before the Liverpool-Tottenham game? Who knows? And then, of course, Liverpool-Tottenham, as you mentioned, Fulham-Brighton, West Ham, Crystal Palace. That's all on Wednesday. Aston Villa, Burnley, Sheffield United, Man United. It's on Thursday. Now let's give a focus a little bit to Liverpool-Tottenham. The header, of course, the main event of the Premier League on Wednesday, so to speak. Big game for Liverpool, especially with the list of injuries that is seemingly, adding a bit by bit every day. Now you can add to the Diogo Jota and Joel Matip after the game against Fulham. Really, it seems like Jurgen Klopp is going to be, very confused. Probably he won't know how he's going to be doing, what he's going to be doing, who's going to be playing. Really, it looks weird in a sense. That he needs to think about the lineup that he should be playing every week. I mean, usually you don't think about the lineups, right? But when you have the list of injuries that Liverpool have, I think it's always in the back of your mind who's going to be playing tomorrow and if they are going to be fit. There's no guarantees really who's going to be fit. Doubly true, there's no guarantees who's going to be fit because of COVID, of course. It still could hit players and what have you, but the vaccine started being used in Britain. The reports saying that it's effective and all. Hopefully this pandemic ends soon anyway, but fitness is a problem now for Liverpool, and this table-topping clash between Liverpool and Tottenham will be decided in a lot of ways on the fitness of the players, maybe, especially Liverpool, who are ravaged by injuries at the moment. They have at least 7 players who are missing straight away, and 2 or the 3 who are really questionable if they're going to start or not. He ended the game with Fabinho and Henderson as centre-halves against Fulham. Who knows how he's going to start today? He doesn't have Gomez, doesn't have Van Dijk, he doesn't have Matip now, it seems. How are we going to be dealing with that? How is going to be, trying to marshal the situation in the midfield. Is going to keep using Curtis Jones or not? Thiago is still unavailable. There's still lots of questions about Trent Alexander-Arnold, who returned to the full start against Fulham, but he didn't perform well really, and was substituted at half-time in the second half really for Neco Williams. What is going to be, the state of Liverpool? That is the big question. I mean, the whole point about Liverpool now is their fitness. Their form in the league is decent, if not underwhelming for what they had for the last couple of seasons. I mean, Liverpool in particular, for the last couple of seasons, their form in the league is comparatively low, I would say, comparatively bad, if you want to speak. Losing, of course, 7-2 to Aston Villa. It just doesn't, again, it doesn't make sense really why Liverpool, should be in this form. But again, when you look at the injuries and the fitness and some of the performances, frankly, Jurgen Klopp deserves probably, to be a little bit better, in a little bit better situation than this. That's what I would say. Liverpool deserve to be in a better situation than this, considering the fitness issues that they have. It will nibble them. It will annoy them in the coming weeks, of course, and certainly this period of Christmas, of course, in England and all Europe, and this period is already characterized by matches coming thick and fast in England, but it's doubly true for this congested season. So nobody really knows how it's going to be looking. As for Tottenham and Mourinho, who publicly came out and said, I have worse injuries than Liverpool, which is, between quotes, of course, shameful really to say, because that's not the truth. Tottenham only miss Eric Lamela as far as certain injuries are concerned, and they only have questions of a Gareth Bale fitness. I mean, for all I know, they could really make their squad is bloated, like, at the moment. The squad is extra fit at the moment, if anything. And they have no injuries in the midfield, which is probably the most important line if you look at the way they play. Yes, I know there's Son and Kane, but of course the midfield has to be strong, because the work that Mourinho does in the defence and the way that he sits deep sometimes, it depends a lot on the midfields. And in the likes of Hojbjerg, Sissoko and Ndombele, I think at the moment he has a terrific midfield, and if he wants to play a bit more offensive, then he will take out Ndombele, put Lo Celso on. So his organisms, his system, it works really well at the moment. In terms of fitness, they work really hard. They've given him the right attitude, the right performances. Not always, of course. The last one against Crystal Palace wasn't exactly great, because they went missing after the goal. So it's not always peaches and creams for Mourinho. But again, just saying that the fact that you're not injured, the squad that you're playing against is not really. I mean, he's basically accusing Liverpool of faking their injuries for some reason. It feels like that, but Mourinho's Captain Deflector. He knows how to change the situation, really try to get around certain aspects of the game. This is an interesting one for Tottenham as well. They didn't defeat Liverpool since 2017. In fact, since that last win at the Wembley, when they were playing at the Wembley, of course, 4-1. Back at the time, it was different. I mean, Ragnar Klavan was playing there. Dejan Lovren was the centre half. Different times really for Liverpool. In that, they evolved a lot from there. And of course, the game has always been interesting there. The draw 2-2 at Anfield in that same season, 2017-18, of course. Then Liverpool defeating them back and forth in 2018-19, and then defeating them back and forth again in 2019-2020. It's really incredible. Again, it's really incredible. This game is fascinating. Will there be a separation? Will they stay joint top? We don't know, really. It's so interesting to look forward to from a Tottenham point of view. The scenario if this game is in my head, like, Liverpool are going to be attacking, Jose Mourinho is going to be parking the bus, because that's what he does best. But let's see. Probably it'll be a different situation. Who knows what we're going to get at Anfield tonight for Liverpool and Tottenham. Certainly a big game that is going to be all eyes on in the Premier League, probably all across of Europe, of course. Big games awaiting at the Anfield. Moving on, of course, and speaking of big games elsewhere, we're moving on to the Bundesliga, and the last 24 hours have been really interesting in the Bundesliga, aren't they? 4 matches were played in the round 12 of the Bundesliga. Werder Bremen hosted Dortmund. Hertha Berlin played Mainz, Stuttgart, Union Berlin, and Eintracht Frankfurt, Borussia Mönchengladbach. The first game, of course, was Eintracht Frankfurt facing Borussia Mönchengladbach, and it was another last-minute save for Marco Rose and his boys, who had an early lead against Eintracht Frankfurt in 13 and 14th minutes thanks to their captain Lars Stindl. Beautifully placed free kick for the opening goal, but from there, you don't know really what happened to Borussia Mönchengladbach. Afterwards, they lost the lead in the 24th minute, thanks to Andre Silva scoring from the penalty spot. I mean, it was a stupid penalty conceded by Stefan Leiner, who got booked, of course, for it. And then, of course, 2 minutes later, Borussia Mönchengladbach basically getting hit on what hurts the most, really, the positioning of the centre-halves, the bad positioning of the centre-halves, gives the opportunity for Andre Silva to capitalise on a Barkok pass, and he gets behind the centre-halves. Beautiful finish under Jan Sommer for the second goal, and Barkok comes back before, just after the hour mark, of course, the half an hour mark, 32 minutes in, he scores the third goal. Also beautiful finish from close range, really. 3-1, it ends at half-time for Eintracht Frankfurt. Everything was looking good, and they started the second half. They defended really well in the second half. Marco Rose made all the substitutions in the world. Lazaro in, Zakaria was in, Perlimbolo was in, and they tried a lot, really, and it took them until the 81st minute to gain a significant advantage, really, when Abraham was sent off for Eintracht Frankfurt. Of course, David Abraham, the Argentinian midfielder for Frankfurt, was sent off in the 81st minute. 8 minutes later, Lars Stindl converts from the spot, really, and it was all drama till the end. 3 minutes later, Lars Stindl, 5 minutes later actually, Lars Stindl is back again, scoring a hat-trick that keeps the point alive for Borussia Mönchengladbach, but again, it's another bad performance of Borussia Mönchengladbach. 3 draws in a row for Borussia Mönchengladbach in the Bundesliga, really. It feels so long ago that they had their last win against Schalke. Predictably, of course, as I mentioned, probably anyone would have won against Schalke this season. 3 draws in a row in the Bundesliga. 3 last-minute saves, really. 3 draws where they concede goals. Their defensive capabilities are really shrinking, as it seems, in the absence of certain players, of course. In particular, as I mentioned, Ben Sebaini, who I really like as a left back. He seems way more good as a defensive left back than Oscar Wendt or any other option at Borussia Mönchengladbach. In Stuttgart, Union Berlin, it was not less dramatic, as of course Union Berlin went ahead. Since the 4th minute, of course, they had the lead. They continued to attack. Of course, they continued to stay strong in the first half. They ended the first half leading 1-0. Stuttgart turned the tables around in the second half. They started, dominating even more, having more chances on target, really. But it was Union Berlin who added the second goal in the 74th minute. Before, of course, late drama, as I mentioned, Gladbach scoring a brace for Stuttgart, giving them one crucial point in this game. Certainly after that big win over Borussia Dortmund, keeps them intact, 6th and 7th. Union Berlin, of course, at 6th, Stuttgart at 7th, but still with the same amount of points, as well as Mönchengladbach, 18 points, all 3 of them. Hertha Berlin drawn goalless against Mainz, really. Nothing changes. Mainz are still bottom of the table, 6 points at 17th. Hertha Berlin still right in the middle with 13 points at 10th. Werder Bremen hosted Dortmund. Of course, this was the big game on Tuesday in the Bundesliga. Everybody was probably watching to see how Dortmund are going to be playing under Edin Terzic, how this is he going to carry the same sort of style that Lucien Favre did? And the answer was yes. He did carry the same style that Lucien Favre plays with, which was, I mean, the worst probably traits of Lucien Favre: being slow, being methodical, being ineffective. Taking the lead at 12 minutes by Rafael Guerreiro, nonetheless, when he started with Youssoufa Moukoko and expected a big sort of bombastic start in his first full game with the side. 28 minutes in, Kevin Morfield, brilliant finish by the way from outside the box, equalises for Werder Bremen, and from there it was a struggle for Dortmund. Players couldn't perform well, really. Jadon Sancho continues to be absent, continues to be ineffective, invisible for Dortmund, really. Since his move to Manchester United fell apart, it went all downhill, really. Jadon Sancho's season hasn't been the same. He couldn't perform consistently, he couldn't perform at all sometimes. This season he probably should be benched. I mean, I know it might sound weird, but he should be benched a little bit, probably to get his mind around certain situations and get his mind into the right direction. Certainly, it needed a 78th minute goal from Marco Reus, missing a penalty from the second ball, of course, coming back from the keeper. He scores, and Dortmund win 3 points against Werder Bremen. I mean, as bad as it is for Werder Bremen, who are winless in 10 games, and they, hovering around the relegation zone. They're pretty close there at 11 points, really only 4 points from the first relegation battle in Arminia Bielefeld. It is also bad for Dortmund. It is even worse for Dortmund as far as their form, despite the win, going back to fourth really and getting back closer to RB Leipzig, Bayern Munich and Leverkusen. But it would need these three to lose today at once, so that can Dortmund return to something that seems like normal form and to get some sort of advantage and to close the gap just a little bit before these three, I think, escape with the race, probably, particularly in the case of Bayern Munich and Leipzig. I don't know about Leverkusen, maybe they will give us a race. I mean, I hope that the Bundesliga title race has as much clubs as possible, really, because that's what makes it interesting. In today's fixtures, Schalke plays Freiburg, really. Schalke looking all sorts of dishevelled, all sorts of despondent, really, as a team, as a board. Loads of bad decisions being taken, furloughing players, furloughing staff. Nobody knows what's happening to that side at the moment. They play against Freiburg, of course, who are standing 14th at the table with 11 points, also hovering relegation zone right above those spots in the Bundesliga. Arminia Bielefeld, speaking of the relegation battlers they face, Augsburg, of course, Augsburg 11th on the table with 13 points, going with decent results for the Bavarian side. Speaking of Bavarian sides, of course, Bayern Munich faces Wolfsburg, a game. There's loads of questions about the fitness of Goretzka. Hansi Flick, of course, didn't confirm that he was injured, but he didn't know how serious the injury was. Of course, the other injuries being Tanguy Kouassi, Javi Martinez and Max Dielman. This is an important game for Bayern Munich. This is a must-win for Bayern, and I know that but probably it doesn't feel like it, but it is a must-win for two main reasons. First of all, for themselves, because they need to keep the momentum going. They need to keep in the top conversation. They cannot afford to lose silly points once again, because the 2 points that they lost against Union Berlin and Werder Bremen, I would say, really silly. I mean, the draw against Leipzig, probably expected, because Leipzig had a great game for most of the first and the second half, for stretches of those halves. But really, the draws against Werder Bremen and the draws against, even the draw against Union Berlin, I would probably understand, considering that they played really well, Union Berlin, and they really threatened Bayern. But the draw against Werder Bremen probably was useless, unnecessary, it shouldn't be happening. They need to keep in the top conversation, of course, keep the momentum going, keep the steam going about themselves, not losing reputation in terms of the Bundesliga title race, in terms of their reputation in Europe as a whole. Started to fade a little bit in these last couple of weeks. Everybody's starting to look at Bayern and say there is some dent in the armour, but who knows. And the second reason, of course, is because Wolfsburg are 5th with 21 points. They're not far away from the top spots, really. A victory for them today, if it happens, it will send them to second, maybe to third. It will give them 24 points and will give them a close gap alongside. I mean, certainly they would overleap Dortmund with whatever result they're going to have. If they have a positive result, they will overleap Dortmund, of course, in the table, but certainly they'll be looking for more than that. They know that they have a good season at the moment, that they could finish in a position where they can return to European football, either from Europa League or the Champions League. It has been a while since we saw them in the Champions League, really. Since 2015-16, I think it was, when we last saw Wolfsburg in the Champions League, and of course they made it to the round of 16 where they were knocked out by Real Madrid. Let's not forget. BayernMunich, as I mentioned, big game. Ahead of another big game against Bayer Leverkusen on Saturday, another game which they need to win as well. It's going to be a head-to-head table-topping clash, hopefully, on Saturday. Speaking of the table-topping clash, and Bayer Leverkusen travel to Köln to face FC Köln, a side that is low-key doing some good business as recently as the last couple of weeks, really, winning against Dortmund, draw against Wolfsburg, then winning against Mainz, 7 points out of the last 3 games, really. Only Leipzig and Leverkusen have better form than Köln in the last 3 games. Let's put it this way. I mean, it sounds crazy when I say it like that, but that is the truth of the matter. That is what is real, more or less. It's going to be a tricky one for Peter Bosch's boys. They had an easy job against Hoffenheim on Monday, dispatching them 4-1. This should be really tricky, and of course I'm going to be looking for this one as well for my boy, the Tunisian boy Elias Skiri, who's doing really, really well with Köln. He's so underrated, that guy, and he's doing really well. I'm going to be keeping an eye on this one for my Tunisian boy, but also, as I mentioned, because Bayer Leverkusen seem to be in pole position to race Bayern off for the title at the moment. We'll see what's going to happen in that game. Interesting one to watch for Peter Bosch, who are doing Peter Bosch's boys, who are having a great season and doing so well in the Bundesliga, and of course the other top contender for the Bundesliga, RB Leipzig, facing Hoffenheim, both coming from European successes. Again, RB Leipzig's one is more impactful than Hoffenheim, so they want to really keep the momentum going and have a big win. Julian Nagelsmann, after the draw against Liverpool now, the expectations are going to be just, have the best season that you could have. Try to play on all fronts. It's going to be a big one when it comes down to him and Jurgen Klopp. But for the moment, they need to keep their focus in the Bundesliga. They keep their eyes well open and they keep their feet well on the ground as well, because as much praise as they're getting, they could, just lose everything they have if they don't focus on the games that they had at the moment. That's all for the Bundesliga midweek action. We finish, of course, the midweek talk with the SerieA. Of course, 2 matches were played on Tuesday. Benevento forced Lazio into a 1-1 draw, and Udinese drawn goalless with Crotone. Bad result, really, for Lazio. It doesn't really look like they're having the best of seasons, really. Then they're 8th at the moment, 18 points, not far from any decent European spots, but really it doesn't bode them for good confidence, these kind of results, ahead of a game against BayernMunich eventually in February, where they seem 70-80% chance they're going to be out of the competition by Mars, really, and by the round of 16 is going to be their last contribution in the Champions League. But of course in SerieA, all the big talk is left for Wednesday, for today. Two big games, 3 if you consider, of course, AC Milan, being all favourites to win the title, and really everybody focusing on them at the moment. The round of matches today kicks off with Juventus versus Atalanta. Pretty interesting encounter for a lot of ways. Juventus, of course, coming off of European success, and a hard game against Genoa in the weekend, where they saved themselves barely thanks to 2 penalties, really. Genoa gave them a good game away from home. Atalanta coming off the back of European success as well against Ajax, defeating Fiorentina, having 2 clean sheets back to back. It was a rare feeling of superiority, I would say, for Atalanta this season in terms of defensive performance, having 2 clean sheets back to back, something they couldn't have for quite a while. For Juventus, it's all about being convincing at the moment, getting the results that they need. Andrea Pirlo would care less if they perform well when they have the results, really. It hasn't been a great season in terms of performances. They haven't been that impressive as of late, but certainly they would only care about the results at the moment because they're not top of the table, they're not leading the race. It's Milan now who have all the cards on deck. For Atalanta, some internal problems. If they're right, if they prove to be right, it's going to be a bad situation. If they prove to be right, for Atalanta, there's a rumored, reported spat between Alejandro Papagomez and Gianpiero Gasperini. Papagomez threatened to leave, of course, threatened to leave the club in January and spill the beans and tell the truth. And reportedly he said to Gasperini that everybody's going to be knowing the truth. What truth? Let's see what's going to happen, really. It sucks to see a side like Atalanta that we grew accustomed to love and really support have these kind of problems where they don't seem, it doesn't seem like the right time to have these kinds of problems. They just turned their season right around the corner, really. They're not in a good position at the table, considering the last couple of seasons. They're at 9th at 17 points, and they need some result against Juventus. They always impress against the big boys, really. Hopefully we see another impressive performance from Atalanta against Juventus. It's going to be an interesting game, a great game, a must-watch, really, for any SerieA fan, for any football fan who loves an interesting encounter. Fiorentina faces Sassuolo with surprise packages of the season. Sassuolo are still relatively close for all of the damage that happened, really, in the last couple of weeks and the result that they had, losing against Inter, drawing against Roma. They're still pretty close to the top half of the table, to the top four, actually. 22 points at 5th. If they get a win against Fiorentina, they could move up to third or fourth, depending on the results of the other games. Certainly the games between Juve and Atalanta. Genoa host another big boy in ACMilan after barely losing, I would say, against Juventus. That's how I put it. Barely losing, really. Juventus didn't really have the best of games. Genoa had a good game, and if it wasn't for the two penalties, probably Genoa would have clinged on to the point, really. AC Milan saving 2 points themselves against Verona, almost having their undefeated streak lost, only for Theo Hernandez to save them in the dying minutes, really, in a game which they dominated against Parma. They should have won, but they didn't win. AC Milan enter this game with the potential return of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, of course, but no, he's not. I'm checking, really. He's not going to be returning. He's not going to be available for this game, so that's going to be a big blow for AC Milan. But as big a blow as it is, probably the game against, results aside against Parma, really. Milan at the moment are gelling really well as a club. They really play well, even without Ibrahimovic. Probably they now understood what they need to do, to the fullest. Stefano Pioli, again, is doing a great job. He's having a shape, he's having a decent side now. He, managed to cope with the absence of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Certainly that absence is going to be really, it leaves a big hole in the team, but still, he coped with it really well. The other games before we come back, of course, the late night kickoffs: Parma, Cagliari, Spezia, Bologna, and Hellas Verona, another surprise side this season, facing Sampdoria. And the big event, of course, the triple header in the SerieA, of course, the third of those big headers being Inter versus Napoli. Every game for Antonio Conte now is a cup final. Every game for Antonio Conte now is a must-win to keep his job, to keep his momentum, really. They're trying as much as they can to run behind Milan and try to snatch the Scudetto from them, because for Antonio Conte, this is the last hope that he got. Doesn't have Europe in mind. Maybe that would be a positive for him. Not playing for Europe maybe will help them. Really will help Antonio Conte wrap his head around what he wants to do with the side a little bit more, because he will have more time to rest, more time to think and focus about certain things in particular. stalling tactically. I mean, it's not about the personnel really. The personnel in the hands of any other coach, they would do something with that personnel. But with Conte, he seems to stagnate so much tactically. The choices that he makes sometimes are really, really weird, and it's not understandable what they can, look forward to. I mean, what is going to be the end game for Antonio Conte? That's basically the question every time he plays. What is going to be the end game for Antonio Conte? What is going to be the eventual aim of his tactical, stubbornness, mostly not making the right choices at the right time. Sometimes he struggled against Cagliari last time out, forced to bring the big boys on at halftime, Lukaku and Eriksen, and bring in Ambrosio at halftime, who scored his second goal. Really, it was a whole mess, and they saved themselves barely by the grin of their, by the skin of their teeth against Cagliari. And now it's another interesting game against Napoli side, who, just behind them at the table, creep in. It's going to be an important result for all the top four on the table. Napoli probably would need a win. They came back from a hard, game against Sampdoria as well last time out, qualifying to the Europa League round of 32. They have an interesting game against Granada, by the way, in terms of draw. It's going to be interesting to see how Napoli are going to be dealing with Inter. Is Gennaro Gattuso going to be the manager on front, really? Is he going to be on the front foot? Is he going to leave Conte with the possession, in which they don't know what to do, really? There's loads of questions being asked about this game, really, tactically, and it's going to be, fascinating. That's how I want to put it. A fascinating battle to unfold between these two coaches. Certainly big game to look forward as the main event in SerieA on Wednesday. That's it for the big Wednesday action and the big midweek action in all of Europe. Of course, as I mentioned, Real Madrid and Athletic Bilbao, it's a separate game. I'm going to be doing a video later on that, reacting to what happened in that game in particular. In the end, I remind you as usual to like, share, comment on this video, subscribe to the channel, of course, enable notifications to receive the updates of the podcast and any other video on this channel. Follow us on social media site PSP, on Twitter, Pitchside Pod on Instagram. If you listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. And until I see you soon, goodbye.